Welcome to the University of Nottingham and the Department of Theology and Religious Studies. This is another in the Why Study series, and we're examining the question with a variety of theologians, why study systematic theology? With me today I have a professor from the Institut Catholique in Paris, who's here as a visiting professor through the Erasmus programme, and it's Professor Henri Gagey. Henri, you're very welcome.
Hello.
We're asking this of every theologian that we encounter. Why study systematic theology? Why study theology? Over to you.
It depends of who you are, when you are, and where you are. Say, when I was 22, I decided to prepare to becoming priest, and then I entered a seminary and I studied theology at the Catholic Institute. For me, it was quite simple. I wanted to be a priest. I had to study theology. I became a priest, and then I became a theologian. For other people, things may be very different. Then I became a spiritual director in the university seminary, and I had a very good directee who discovered at length he didn't want really to be a priest. It was not his vocation, but he was available to become a theologian. And he chose not to be a priest and accepted to become a theologian. So there are many situations, you know. We have lay people who are very church committed, and they need a better training, a better view of what is faith and how to practice it and how to share it. And so they come to study theology. Some of them study theology for long. Some of them have only a very short training. But in every case, they become able to articulate what is at stake in their faith.
What is the impact of studying theology on a student?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. For some of them, they are deeply believer, deeply committed in the church. But they do that in a quite fideistic way, you know, believing very much, understanding fewer. Mm. In that case, doing theology helps them to have a broader vision of what it is to believe. In some situations, studying theology helps you a lot to make decisions. You are a parish priest, you are responsible for a Catholic journal or something like that. If you have a great vision of what it is theology and what it is the story of Christian doctrines and practices, you are able to face challenges, questions, okay? If you are, say, a scholar in history or psychology, if you know something in theology, it can help you to locate many events and many human realities in a broader frame. You know, the late theologian and philosopher, German, I forgot his name.
What did he write on?
Yeah, at the beginning of the 20th century, said theology is the only revolutionary science because it asks the most important questions for the present. And I really think if you do theology quietly, peacefully, you are discovering the most important issues we are facing in our present. And for me, theology is really a way to understand God and humanity, and even if you are not a deep believer, it may help you to discover much more what it is to be a human being. So I find it interesting here to discover a way to teach theology in a less church ambience, atmosphere, In France, we study theology in a very church environment. Here, it's not exactly the same. You have people who study theology without being very much involved in the church. And I find it also interesting, because I think theology can be of good help to understand not only faith, but human life.
When we study theology, we often end up we may set out to start studying theology, but we become an expert in either the history of the thought of a particular theologian, or we become experts in a particular text. How does the student of theology, how do you refocus from the sheer amount of reading you have to do? Say you're studying Karl Barth. Karl Barth produces volumes and volumes.
Yeah.
How do you refocus from just the sheer challenge of mastering all these books to the actual theological question?
If you take seriously systematic theologians, you must consider they are not writing for the pleasure of writing. If they do this very heavy job to write books or papers, it's because they have a problem to solve. And you don't understand a theologian if you don't understand what is the very important, very alive problem he tries to solve. And if you are understanding what is the problem, so you are concerned about what he writes, and so you are not only specialized in texts, but you become concerned by the questions addressed through the text. And for me, it's really the challenge in training students in theology.
So, in a way, to take the famous traditional thing of St. Anselm, fides quaerens intellectum,
Yeah.
it is faith seeking and understanding. In a way, what you're saying is that theology is a way of a problem seeking a solution.
Absolutely, absolutely. A practical problem seeking a solution.
And can you give me some examples of the problems that inspire theologians?
Oh, there are a lot. Say, we read a text and we say that is the word of God.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Catholic liturgy, we show the text saying that is the word of the Lord. How is that possible? How the written text can become an addressed word, and in which frame and under which condition? That's really an interesting question. And if you are able to understand it in the frame of liturgy, because it is mainly in the frame of liturgy that it happens, you become to understand a lot about mass media and communication.
Right.
You know? Because you are able to grasp how a text, how an idea can become an event, a provocative event, disgusting or very appealing, depending on the case. But anyway, yes, I think that each time you are thinking about an important issue in the frame of theology, you are discovering anthropological issues as well.
A student comes to you and says, I'm interested in theology, I'm interested in some of the theological questions. What's the next step? Is it read a book? Is it reflect? What?
It depends.
Okay.
We would speak much more.
Okay.
In order to understand for which reason does he or she feel concerned by theology.
So theology then has to become, are you saying in a sense, you don't approach theology as another subject, you approach it as a practice within your own life?
Absolutely. I had a Jewish student in the Catholic Institute. He was a Jewish sociologist of religion, and he wanted to understand Christianity because he thought it was necessary among Jewish people specialized in religious studies. Some of them knew very well Christianity. And so he studied for 4 years among us, and he became a good friend. He was interested in theology for very specific reasons that were not the same. Young seminarians were interested in theology. No? And so it's very difficult to give only one way.
Okay. So if I've heard you correctly, theology begins in a problem, but it doesn't end up as a simple discipline that you just move through. It's something that you actually have to explore in a way that answers your questions.
In a way that enables you to answer your questions. Thomas Aquinas described theology as a subalterna scientia.
A subaltern science. In other words, it is a science that comes secondary to the practical things of life.
Or mystical things of life.
Okay.
Also.
Yes, yes. In other words, it begins after I have engaged in a reality. I then reflect on it.
As Stanley Hauerwas said, we are always starting in the middle. We come to theology for non-theological reasons.
Okay. On that point, I'm going to say thank you, Henri, for coming and sharing your thoughts with us today.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Here we are in the University of Nottingham, and I hope you have enjoyed listening to another theologian trying to answer the question, why study theology? Thank you, Henri.